You are listening to Despair by Michael Brockbank, Episode 17. As the two exited the chambers, the faint sounds of distant screams echoed down the stone corridor. Although the screams were less panicky than before, it was apparent there were a lot of scared people tucked away somewhere within the cavern. Magarius walked in the lead, with Darius coming up behind his master. Although the large, burly man feared nothing living in the world, he knew enough to respect the power of his liege. Even in his wolf-man form, his master could easily turn him into dust. It's been almost a century. Are you sure that little witch was right? Darius asked, keeping a watchful eye on the corridor. It was his job to protect and serve his master, which often meant intervening in assassination attempts. Over the years, he had taken more than his fair share of arrows and spears for his master. She has been correct thus far. Perhaps you're right, and this just wasn't the correct township, Magarius replied, still fidgeting with his cloak. The tall man's slender build prevented the cloak from fitting as well as it had many years ago, but that was fitted on a much different body before it had degraded. Maybe you haven't killed her so soon. What happened was necessary and unavoidable, Magarius quickly interrupted. The Lich didn't kill for the sake of killing. He wasn't a ruthless individual, but had no qualms about putting an end to a potential threat whenever he felt the need. During his existence, he had felt the need quite often, but viewed each one as justified. The young woman was a talented seer and divined a lot of useful information for the Lich in his quest. However, she also saw things she wasn't meant to divulge and had threatened to go with the local constabulary. Her death was simply one of many to keep Magarius hidden and protected from interference. The two men walked up to the large door where the suit of armor stood guard. It remained motionless as Magarius lifted up his hand, palm outward, and muttered a phrase. The entire door was illuminated with a faint light for a brief moment as a slight clicking sound from a lock echoed from within the wooden construct. Seemingly on its own, the door slowly swung on its hinges inward to reveal the massive chamber it concealed. Before the two men was a vast room carved into the stone. It was filled with a large number of small cages, each holding a single person. Even the children had their own cage, though many of them stood next to their parents. As they walked in, the screams and chatter of the people came to an abrupt halt. "Please, sir, help us escape," one of the older men said in a hushed tone. "He's a monster." Monster? I'd hardly call myself a monster. A monster would denote a grotesque lack of moral center, a delight from torture, or perhaps even slaughtering people for the sheer pleasure of it, Magarius replied slowly, walking towards the man. That voice. But you're not. Who are you? The confused man asked. The body was different, but the voice was burned into the man's soul. It was the voice of the one who imprisoned the entire village within the confines of the cave. In a quick flash of light, everyone he knew appeared within the small cells, locked away from their loved ones only to see them through the confines of the bars. I may be driven, my dear sir, Magarius continued, but I am no monster. What do you want from us? Asked a younger woman in the next cell over. It was apparent she had been crying. Information. Actually, most of you might also contribute to helping me in more ways than you could possibly imagine, Magarius replied, raising his voice so that all could hear him. As he walked between the cells, the Lich closely examined each imprisoned soul. He wanted to find that perfect candidate for his next experiments. Magarius felt he was close to finding a way to stabilize his condition, but the answer still eluded him. In the past, he would grab a poor soul off the streets that no one would miss. This time was different. Propelled by desperation to find a solution before he could no longer move from one body to another, Magarius had no doubt that an entire missing village would arouse suspicion. However, he felt confident the answer to many of his questions lay with this particular townsfolk. Besides, as long as they were careful about disposing of the bodies, no one would be able to track the villagers to the cliff. The spell he had cast earlier made sure of it. His examination stopped as Magarius looked deep into the eyes of a younger man. He was well built and appeared as healthy as any human. A small part of the Lich was somewhat disappointed he chose Bernard's body instead of having the pick of the litter among the townsfolk. On the other hand, Bernard's visage had been chosen for a very specific purpose for later. "You look healthy enough," Magarius said, approaching the younger man. "For what?" the man asked, standing his ground. It appeared he had no fear of the Lich. "Yes, you'll do nicely." "A warning to you? I'll go down taking a piece of you with me." "Oh, I have no doubt about that, my dear boy," Magarius replied, opening his cloak. He looked down at a series of sticks of varying shapes, colors, and sizes. They were wands of assorted powers, each one possessing a powerful spell. He fumbled through them while humming to himself. The Lich got a bit of pleasure from the thought of the man not knowing what was going to happen. "Not that one. Not this one either. Where did it go?" Magarius said seemingly to himself. It was a bit of a game he enjoyed playing, as his prey looked on with confusion and anticipation of what could happen. Unlike many before him, though, the man stood his ground, stone-faced as before. "You better have something there that'll put me down quick," he said unflinchingly to the lanky man before him. "Actually, I do, my dear friend." Magarius pulled a charcoal black wand from a pocket. He blew on the tip as if to signify that it had been dusty, although it was perfectly clean. With a quick flick of his wrist, he aimed the wand at the man and shouted an indiscernible word. An instant spark of light emerged from the wand and struck the man, sending him to the ground. The room erupted with screams and yells from the remaining townsfolk.
"Enough!"
Magarius shouted. The word echoed through the chamber with an unholy reverberation that seemed to touch everyone's soul with darkness. "You killed him, you bastard!" the old man shouted from his cell. "No, my dear sir. I put him to sleep. He is much too valuable to me to just kill him," Magarius replied, returning the wand to the pocket within his cloak. "What are you going to do with him?" "Take him to the room, would you?" Magarius said back to Darius. The burly man walked over to the cell while reaching into the pocket of his overcoat to retrieve a single key. After opening the cell and hoisting the younger man over his shoulder with ease, Darius began walking out of the chamber. "For the rest of you, I'm looking for a young man who has an ancient artifact in his possession that belongs to me. It's egg-shaped and covered in silver and gold glyphs.